Morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Pastor Howard Langford, and I'm coming to you um, a little bit just to talk about what happened last night with Will Smith and Chris Rock, what's going on in our community, some of the things that we are seeing played out on live TV in real time, some of the things that are making headlines. I made a post about it this morning on my personal Facebook page, Howard Langford, and we really have to look at this thing called mental health. Mental health is something that is taken lightly. We never know. I used to tell my wife this. I know you see it as just a straw, but we don't know the weight of that straw. But it was simply that last straw that broke the back of the camel. And I think we saw that last night played out in real time. A lot of time what men display as anger is really something other than anger. Anger is just about a result because we understand in the world of psychology that anger is a secondhand emotion stemming from something unresolved, fear, frustration, disappointment, and that's where we see the result of anger. I used to teach my children this that I know what level of venom can flow through my veins because my father was a very, very active person, I should say, where when you hear me say things like I would smack somebody in half, well, I got that from the best of both worlds. My mother, who was never afraid, and my father, who would put hands on you and would knock you out. To the point where most of my brothers and sisters had very poor relationships with my father, which led me to want to be a better father and have and maintain relationship with my children because I never wanted them to make a decision with their life where just 13 seconds would detour them from their destiny. I raised four sons and a daughter, but I did it with a wife who treasures me. Now, let me just say what that means. I look at my wife as if she is a Felicia Rashad or a Coretta Scott King. Now, we know that Felicia Rashad is a fictional character on The Cosby Show. She's not a real person, but she emulates what strength and grace and character really is. I understand if you ever look at Mrs. Cosby, the wife of Bill Cosby, and if you've ever studied her mannerism, it is my understanding that Felicia Rashad emulated her down to the T. Now, it takes an especially incredible woman to to stand beside incredibly special men. Now, I often tell people that my wife is a very strong person, extremely strong and extremely brilliant. I always say that I married up, and I did. And because she's strong and not intimidated by my strength, we can tackle things like mental health appropriately. Getting back to the point where I said it's just a straw, but it was the straw that broke the back of the camel. We as men, we are prone to handling situations inwardly, which will then cause us to implode outwardly. I did a teaching last week about the fly who lays an egg on a leaf, and as the caterpillar is walking along the leaf, eating the leaf, he eats the eggs that are on the leaf. And the eggs on the inside of the caterpillar begin to turn into larvae, and they hatch and they're being birthed inside of the caterpillar. So outwardly the caterpillar is looking fine and healthy, and he's fat and he's eating. Inwardly he's dying. Oh my God, you've got to listen to the broadcast tonight on the Nightly Spirit of Truth. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to have it replayed. Men are dying inwardly, and it's being displayed outwardly. So as we are walking around, marching, talking about how lives matter, but we don't look at each other on the streets, we turn our heads the other way. If I look at you, we make eye contact. I remember a day when I was growing up, when a man would make eye contact with another man, we would dap each other up. What's up? How you doing? You good? I'm good. How you feeling? I'm feeling good. Even when we didn't know each other. To the point where I found out that it made women jealous of the relationships that men had with each other, especially men of color. The relationships that we had with each other. Because we knew that we were a community. I'm not saying that when that happened, that there was that black on black crime. And there's white on white crime. There's Latino crime on Latinos. Every community has crime within its community, but it does not diminish the bond that we had with each other. When I see basketball players like LeBron James marching and singing things about lives matter, and it's not that I'm not careful to say BLM or anything like that. It's just that, hey, really, at the total end of the day, we are all people striving to be humans beings. See, once you're dead, you're no longer a human being, you're a human dead. But we're striving to be human beings. And then I watched this same basketball player throw a ball, cock back a basketball and throw it at a young guy who's on the floor after diving for a rebound. And he's aiming the basketball at his head. When I watch these ball players emasculate each other after just a year ago, saying words of affirmation, is it for show? Are you jumping on a political agenda? Or are you really concerned about the health of your brother and your sister? I remember about maybe almost 20 years ago, I had the unfortunate pleasure of meeting Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. They won't remember the encounter, but I was at an event in Hampton, Virginia, and I said, Lord, if I could just meet these two iconic brothers, it would be monumental. And less than 10 minutes later, I ran into them, and I extended my hand. I said, I appreciate the work that you've done in the 60s and the 70s. I extended my hand. Jesse Jackson looked at Al Sharpton, put his finger on his temple, and then walked away and left my hand there, extended. Less than a week later, he was mic'd up. Jesse Jackson was mic'd up and didn't realize he was mic'd up, and called President Barack Obama, who was just a candidate at that time, the day that he was announcing his candidacy for presidency, the N-word. I believe that it was that lack of respect for a black man who was trying to find himself, because I was really young back then, and looking at you as an iconic figure and saying, well, that's someone that maybe I want to emulate. I believe it was the subtle diss that caused him a dramatic fall from grace. Not saying that I'm anybody special, but I recognize the importance of valuing people who you are in front of. And that's what happened. Well, getting back to last night, I'm watching mental health play out in real time. One of the things that I've studied is that the trauma that happened to the Jews with the Holocaust, that trauma goes down to the DNA of the next few generations. It causes your DNA to be altered, and the many years of trauma that blacks have had on this planet. I say black people, African Americans, um, that we have experienced on this planet. Now we're 50 years into something that in America, we're 50 years into something that has caused us to just be people who charade the platforms and not really have an intricate moment of love and embracing for each other. Why do I say that? Again, I mentioned how we used to dap each other up and brother, you good and how you feeling? I'm good. You good? You good? You eat today? You strong? Good. If you need something, let me know. Holla back. Now it's when I walk in the store and I look at you, you turn your head. You look down. You look the other way. If I say what's up, you treat me as if I said nothing. When you don't realize that when your life ends suddenly because of a tragic event, I'll be the first one in the street saying, yo, that was dirty, that was wrong. I don't need you being the first in the street saying, yo, that was dirty, that was wrong, if you can't value my life when I'm alive. To walk up on stage and to smack another human being. Now, I'm not saying that what Chris Rock did was wrong. Was it wrong? It was wrong what Chris Rock said. It was equally wrong and taken to the next level when Will Smith smacks him across the face and then walks back and curses, keep my wife's name out of your bleeping mouth. I watched people like Dr. King face bomb threats, having his house explode in a room where his children slept. I watched his life being threatened over and his life being threatened over and over and over again. Yet he could still stand with the grace and the fervor of a true martyr. I watched documentaries of Fred Hampton, who brought communities together, who brought Crips and Bloods and brought Anglo Americans who hated Black people together and realized we have a common struggle against poverty, brought all these people to the table. And then their life tragically ends, but they die a martyr. Not because someone said something about you, but because you were actually a part of change. Words are painful and words hurt, but we're living in a community and in a time where people are dying from actual gun violence. Just over a week ago, a young woman, a journalist in our local television station, her life ended tragically over a spilled drink while she's out just socially dining at a restaurant. A child was crossing the street on her way to school, a promising young child. Her life ended while crossing the street while the coward driver continued to drive and didn't check on her. Some believe that her life could have been spared had he just stopped and issued rescue tactics that would have kept her life alive. I have to finish this book, Chaos, because it was really a play on Dr. King's final book that he wrote, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? And it was my plan to finish writing this book called Chaos to mark the 50-year anniversary since the book came out. And I failed my community on doing that. So I must pick up the pen and finish writing this book, Chaos, because that's exactly where we are. We are at a place in the world where it's just moments before Genesis 1 and 2, where it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was void and without form. Darkness was on the face of the earth. We're at a place now where the world is dark again. Countries invading each other, violence in the churches, fights breaking out in the pulpits. There is so much trauma being handed out, insurrections and people storming the Capitol without any regard for life, killing police officers. There is so much trauma handed down, sexual predators in the pulpit, sexual predators in the church. My wife was reading a study just last week where 34% of pastors are sexual predators in the church. God bless.